Yeah, I'm from Michigan originally. I was born in Battle Creek. My parents were there. They were somewhat indirectly a part of the Great Migration. My grandparents had come north from Arkansas and from Tennessee. I think I knew that I would probably be an educator very young, probably as a maybe even an elementary school child. I was placed in a speech therapy class. I think a lot of kids were that probably nowadays wouldn't be. Your teeth aren't quite where they should be, you know, that kind of thing. But I attended Ann J. Kellogg Elementary School, which was one of the first schools in the nation that actually integrated disabled children and non-disabled children in the same school. And so I remembered seeing the children that were on the tail end of the polio epidemic, that kind of thing. We had kids that were cognitively disabled, but they're also just the kids at school. They're also just the kids in the neighborhood. So all of that kind of came together, and I always knew that I would probably do something. I'd had a great deal of influence of my faith the years that I attended Catholic school, the expectation or the requirement that you give service. You always give service. So I really didn't think I would go into banking or something like that, but it would be more of a not quite missionary work, but a service work and give service to God in some way like that. When I was in high school, I had a job where I actually got paid, and I babysat for a woman that was a speech therapist. And so that brought me back to the speech therapy, which I ultimately got a degree in once I came to Chicago and graduated from Mundelein College. We talked about it all the time. I came from a very traditional family in a lot of ways. It was like, you know, 5 o'clock, everybody's at the table, everybody's having dinner. And of course, Walter Cronkite would be on. We'd see the footage from the Vietnam War, or we would see what was happening in Selma and down south with the marches and things, and also began to see more and more about what was happening in other places, Oakland, California, Chicago, the Black Panthers, you know, the riots in Detroit. Listening to different types of music, listening to music that was banned on the radio. You know, you wouldn't hear Curtis Mayfield or, you know, James Brown sing "I'm Black and I'm Proud," you know, to be able to change your hairstyle and wear natural hair. I mean, all those kinds of things started happening. I was involved in a lot of demonstrations in high school for things like Black History Month program. I mean, things that are so benign now, but they were really pretty significant back in those days. You know, and the police coming and dragging kids out because we weren't in class, and parents very much afraid that because a lot of our parents, my mom, not my dad, believed in what we were doing and was always very fearful that, you know, kids would get hurt. I think Kent State in the 1970s affected them a lot because I think there was a sense of always knowing that Black students could be at risk. We had seen Jackson State. We had seen a number of those things. When we got married, for a short time, I was in sales for Heinz, and then I also knew, I should have known all along, that that was not going to be my niche. And I went back to work at a private mental health hospital and worked with a lot of women that were struggling with issues related to change of life, you know, children leaving home, going out as young adults or college students to find their way in the world. And maybe a lot of the clients that we worked with at the hospital had been moms that had stayed home all the time and had not really gone out and had careers or done those kinds of things. And so to find yourself in 1980 in the midst of this kind of change was really very difficult. So it was at that time then I went back to graduate school and worked on my degree in education of the deaf and hard of hearing, kind of building on my degree in speech therapy. Well, Ron always read a lot of periodicals, and he was a regular reader of the Education Week, and there was a posting there for an Appleton position. So he applied, and he came back a while later and he said, you remember that position I told you about? You know, they've contacted me. And I said, the position? And he said, yeah, you know the position? And oh, yeah, you know. I don't know that I really remembered it, and I said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, that'll be great. They wanted him to come for an interview. And I said, well, of course they do. You know, you'd be wonderful. And so he came for the interview and came back, and he said, yeah, everything went really well, and they want me to come back and bring you. And at which point, it really began to sink in that this was more than just, an exercise. And I said, bring me? And he said, yeah. And I said, now tell me, where is this? He said, well, I've been telling you, it's Appleton, Wisconsin. And I said, oh yeah, I remember that part, but what side of Milwaukee is it? Now this is pre-MapQuest, pre-Google, pre any of that. So, and I said, what side of Milwaukee? And he said, well, no, it's, kind of like Green Bay. In terms of my career, my experience in Kaukauna, which amazed a lot of people because I wasn't even familiar with Appleton, so to land in Kaukauna was really more of a gift than not. I was able to carve out some autonomy for myself there as a professional person. And also, because I was a teacher for the deaf, and there had never been a teacher for deaf kids there before, I felt like I was welcomed with open arms because there were these special kids that no one really had the training or the background for, and so here I come. And these kids they were young, they really hadn't seen much of the world, and what they learned of the world, they learned it through me. And their parents and the community could all see that. So that was really a gift. Now in the very beginning, there were things that I did. I never traveled off the main street. I never went up into the neighborhoods or anything like that, which one day I don't know, if I was doing a home visit or going with somebody for lunch or something, and I was driving just wherever I was going in town, and I wasn't even thinking about it, and it did dawn on me that I had veered off of the main drag, and I laughed out loud to myself because it felt a little, I knew it wasn't silly then, but it felt silly in retrospect, why did I feel like I just had to do that? But I did, and I never had a negative experience there that I can recall. Growing up Roman Catholic, and there are so many Catholics here. I mean, you throw a rock, right? And so there was that little inroad into a lot of how people thought, how they were brought up, different experiences that we shared growing, especially folks of my age, people that were pre-Vatican II, Vatican II, post-Vatican II, that kind of thing that we could all kind of relate to. So, and then even with the folks that were Lutheran, I mean, there were so many of those that had the intermarriage in their families or conversions and different things. So that helped a lot too, yeah. There was a bit of a snippet on public radio just this morning, and the information spoke to the numbers of students of color nationally versus the numbers of teachers. And it's in some communities, Appleton being one, less than half. I think we do need to look at how do we reflect ourselves to our children, to our community, to each other. Do we look like the world that we belong to, or do we look like, the Appleton of the 1940s and 50s or something, So, but I don't offer that as a criticism, but just as something to be aware of, and I do see that as an opportunity. I think that the diversity in our community should be reflected in more ways than just, the people that are at the mall or something. I've seen Appleton grow a lot, not just in terms of census and people of color, but I've seen it grow a lot in terms of sensitivity to things. I think projects such as this, looking at the history and the contributions of African Americans as far back as we can take it is essential. And I look back to the time when we came here, our family, almost 25 years ago. If someone had told me, oh, there'll be a time and you'll be a part of a project and there'll be history and we'll go back and we'll learn about people that were involved in the fur trade and all of that, I would have laughed as I protected my already packed up boxes that were ready to go. And so these are the kinds of things that give me hope as I look to my grandchild being here and what the community as a whole will be able to offer him.